Alright, who remembers this beast? It had an unreal screen, crazy camera with 10 times zoom, uber fast charging, and a screen on the back? It's called the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra and it's about as ultra a phone as we've ever had. It just takes everything to the next level. It was released almost 3.5 years ago, and so is almost outdated by today's standards, yet looks every bit as cutting edge and space age as any phone we've had this year. And at a whopping £1,200, it certainly had the 2024 pricing too. The huge 6.8-inch Quad HD Plus 120Hz AMOLED display, indoors at least, looks stunning. It's almost perfect for watching YouTube, scrolling through the same social media apps for hours at a time, and of course playing games, as you just have so much screen in front of you. And with minimal bezels and a punch hole too, it's almost like a window into another reality. The main difference between this and a 2024 phone display is the brightness. Smartphone makers have pushed panel brightness to another level, and with many of the latest flagship phones coming in doubly as bright in HBM mode, which is essentially where the front sensors pick up on really bright environments like sunlight and then boosts the phone screen brightness to compensate temporarily. Yeah, it just doesn't get as bright with this, but it's still far from a bad phone screen. Hey guys, I'm really trying to hit that 100k mark, so if you could hit subscribe, genuinely it would mean the world to me. We've actually had 3 generations of Qualcomm Snapdragon SoC since this thing came out, which makes the Mi 11 Ultra sound old, but performance is not bad at all. It has the Snapdragon 888 with 12GB of memory, and so it's no slouch whatsoever. It still games really well, even if it's not the fastest phone in the world anymore. If you're a gamer, you can still play 3D titles and make use of that wonderful display. And needless to say, swapping between the same 3 social media apps every 15 seconds for hours on a time is absolutely as smooth as you would expect with 12 gigs of RAM, thanks to the Mi 11 Ultra being pretty stacked and actually a bit overpowered when it first came out. I guess we should probably talk about that second screen. It's an odd one for sure, and was actually dropped in the successive Xiaomi phones. It's used to show the time, the date, the battery and notifications. It's a pretty tiny little thing, but if you have your phone flat on a table, it lets you see quick information at a glance. Xiaomi lets you customize it in the settings app with different colors, clock styles. You could even add a custom text message to display, or make it really fun, add a little photo or any kind of image you want in there. It is, if I'm honest, a bit gimmicky, and I can see why they got rid of it, but it's pretty cool if you're really into customizing your phone. It's certainly a unique feature. I've seen the Mi 11 Ultra on eBay for about £400, which is surprisingly high for a phone that's over 3 years old and from Xiaomi. But as you might imagine, for 1200 quid, they never made or sold heaps of these. It isn't like the Samsung or Apples of the world, and so they're considered pretty rare these days. It's also huge, so it's not going to be for everyone. Though having the curves actually makes it feel easier to hold in the hand than if they were to square them off. And the curves aren't actually just on the sides, but also on the top and bottom, so swiping up to go home or to pull down the notification shade feel a bit nicer than on pretty much any other phone. I actually found the accidental touch rejection to be a bit better than OnePlus's, so there's less worry of the phone acting up when you're trying to press something and something else comes up. This is of course tied into the software, which is where the Mi 11 Ultra gets a little controversial. See, Xiaomi's version of Android has suffered from notification slowdown and even some in-phone ads over its lifetime. And now the phone is on HyperOS based on Android 14, it's improved a fair bit. Some might not like the bubbly and friendly aesthetic, but I think it looks fairly decent, and from a functionality standpoint, I have no complaints. And the 5000 mAh battery with 67 watt wired and wireless charging combines to create a really decent battery package. It lasts all day, up to 2 days if you're a really light user, and at the same time charges from 0 to 100 in just over half an hour, which is heaps faster than the latest £1,000 iPhones and Samsung Galaxies. Even with that second screen on the back, I wouldn't worry about the Mi 11 Ultra's longevity. But one of the areas that really blew people away when this first came out was the camera setup on the back. To start with, the massive panel or visor along the top doesn't look like any other smartphone you'll see out in the streets. But the hardware on offer here is just as impressive as the cool design. The main 50 megapixel camera has a massive sensor underneath it, unlocking terrific low light performance and giving its images superb dynamic range, detail, and even a nice amount of natural bokeh on close-up subjects, if you want that background separation without having to rely on the phone's sort of spotty portrait mode quality. The ultra-wide at 48 megapixels is also pretty impressive, with a huge field of view for getting plenty in the frame. The sensor is smaller at about half an inch, but that's not as tiny in the grand scheme of things compared to a lot of other phones. But that 48 megapixel 5x periscope was the start of the show. It might not be as powerful as those on the phones that came after it, but being able to zoom so far in and still get high quality images was still pretty novel back in 2021. Not only is this great for plucking out details from afar, but it can give scenes more depth. It's at a focal length that a lot of films are shot at to give a natural focus fall off without having the need to open the aperture right up. And video is a fair bit worse than the stills, and that's to be expected of a phone of its age. It's not quite the era where we started getting mega smartphone video at like the iPhone 14 Pro kind of time, and even so, it's not that bad, with the Ultra HD 4K, which is what I'd shoot over the 8K, still pretty stable with decent color and decent stabilization. There are lots of little things that this phone does great. The haptics or vibrations are really crisp and help the phone feel really nicely well made. It has IP68 water and dust resistance, so even if you're caught out in British weather, you should be absolutely fine and you can use it out in the rain. This phone still has an IR blaster on it, so you can use it as a remote for devices that require the infrared signal, but you might have lost the original remote. And though you might expect that massive camera bar at the top to really make the phone feel imbalanced, its weight distribution is basically perfect. I saw a review saying that the thing was really top heavy. This is absolute nonsense. It looks top heavy, but it really isn't in person. However, as cool as the Mi 11 Ultra is to hold and use, this phone is unlikely to get another official platform upgrade ever again. And that might not be much of a problem right now, but going forward, it will become incompatible with your favorite apps, games, and features. So if you're planning on using one of these for the next 3 or 4 years, you'll probably have to sideload and flash a custom ROM to get the later versions of Android going forward, which is fine if you know what you're doing, but the vast majority of people aren't likely to want to do this. Thankfully, this is a very niche phone for nerds, so it's likely that you will just buy one of these and flash your own software. The Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra is a strange device. It includes many of the great features found in phones much newer than it, but it retains that quirky, interesting design that phones seem to have moved away from, with manufacturers going the safe route with their more recent design. At the same time, if anything, it's proof that smartphone tech really hasn't majorly improved in the last 3 or 4 years, and instead, we've just had small quality of life tweaks as opposed to the large leaps that we got before lockdown. The Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra is some phone, but as with a lot of forgotten tech, it remains an interesting marker for what the industry was doing the moment it was released.